Psalm 73 begins with this declaration. It opens with the word ach, which says surely or certainly. He says, certainly God is good to Israel. Certainly God is good to the pure in heart. But he says, but for almost a minute there, I lost sight of that. He says, as for me, I almost lost my footing. My steps nearly slid out from under me. I began to envy the arrogant. I looked around, and he says in verse 3, I saw the shalom of the wicked. Everything's great for them. Everything's continually seems to work out for them. Shoot, I don't even think death hurts for them. He goes on and describes things like that. He says, look at these wicked ones in verse 12. They're always at ease. They're growing, amassing wealth. Then in verse 13, he gets to his second his second certainty. In verse 1, he had said, surely God is good to the pure in heart. Certainly he's good to the pure in heart. But he lost sight of that, right? He had slipped. He's falling. He's about to crack his head. And now this was the certainty, right, that he'd almost slipped to. He says, certainly in vain I have kept my heart pure. I've wasted my time washing my hands in innocence. It's been a total waste. He almost slipped, almost cracked his head. But verse 23 says, but here's the deal. He says, Lord, I'm continually with you. You hold my right hand. There were moments when I was completely disillusioned, he says, feeling ready to give up, to walk away. But I wasn't about to abandon you. He says, I am with you, Lord, continually. And when I slipped, you didn't let me crack my skull and lose my brains. You seized my right hand, verse 23. You pulled me up. The wicked were prospering. The righteous were struggling. None of it made sense, he says, until I entered the sanctuary of my God, until I fixed my eyes on you. That's when I began to really discern where all of this was leading. In your presence, I became aware of the actual certainty. Verse 18, he says, what's actually certain is that their path is slippery and a destructive one. He equates the present reality that feels like it's going to last forever. He says it's like a dream. We're going to wake up from it and realize this wasn't reality. He says, when I let this bitterness, this disillusionment take hold of my heart, I wasn't thinking, he says, I was like a beast before you. I was like an animal. But the reality is this, he says, you are continually with me. You hold my right hand. I may have slipped, but you got me, Lord. You won't let me fall on my face. Verse 24 says, Lord, you are with me, guiding me. And when it's all said and done, I know that you'll take me into glory. Who have I in heaven but you? And there's nothing on earth I desire besides you. My flesh may fail, and my heart may fail, but you are the strength of my heart. You are my portion, O Lord. You're all I need. I just want to be near you. And so where the psalmist ends this journey is actually what is declared at the very beginning. Understanding that certainly God is good to Israel, to the pure in heart. He says, I realize that now. Is it all worth it? Yeshua calls us to deny ourselves, to take up our crosses and follow him. And that calling is not a calling to comfort. It's not a calling to ease. It's a calling to faithfulness, to trust in him. And in the short term, yeah, it can look like living for self brings a lot more shalom in the immediate. But in his presence, it all becomes clear. If you try to cling to this life, to live for this life, it slips through your fingers. We lose it. But if we let go of this life for his sake and cling to his ways, we will find the real shalom, the true life that we're actually looking for.